Princess Diana's death wasn't just a heartbreaking end to a royal love story, it was the spark that ignited decades of suspicion. For years, the world was fed a tragic narrative. A car crash, a reckless driver, relentless paparazzi. But the deeper truth? That remained hidden. Until now. Nearly 30 years later, a name has finally been spoken, and it came from the most unexpected voice of all. King Charles III. What forced his hand? Was it guilt? Regret? Or something darker pushing him to reveal a secret buried in the heart of Buckingham Palace? Late at night, under the cold glow of moonlight, the palace loomed quiet. But inside, something stirred. Cameras flashed. A nation held its breath. Then Charles stepped forward. "I speak what must be known," he said, his voice sharp and steady. It wasn't a tribute. It wasn't an apology. It was a reckoning. As he spoke, images from that night flooded the screens. Paparazzi, the silver Mercedes, the Paris tunnel, Diana's final moments. But what gripped the world wasn't the past. It was his present confession. Someone had ordered it. And according to Charles, the answer wasn't buried in conspiracy theories or foreign enemies. It was closer. Much closer. Inside the palace walls. This wasn't a rumor. This was the king himself pointing a trembling finger toward power, secrecy, and betrayal. What followed was a silence heavier than thunder. Shock. Disbelief. And an uneasy question hanging in the air. If Charles is telling the truth, what else has the crown been hiding? The screen fades to black, then replays that doomed evening. Diana and Dodi slide into the back seat of the Mercedes, unaware of what's coming. Flashbulbs light up their smiles. Then the chase. The tunnel. The crash. August 31st, 1997. Etched into history. Yes, the official story blamed speed, alcohol, and chaos. But Charles's revelation rips open the case again. And this time, the public won't be silenced. The truth has been knocking for decades. Tonight, the door has finally opened. The palace's silence only deepened the mystery. Whispers grew louder. Was there more to Diana's crash than the public had been told? Could the real trigger have come from inside the royal circle itself? The official story painted a tragic accident. But when seen through the lens of King Charles's recent confession, the narrative shifts, no longer a misfortune, but potentially a betrayal. The visual re-examination doesn't just revisit old heartbreak, it hints at a truth long buried in shadows. A truth waiting, perhaps begging to come to light. Now, the world is being asked to look again, to question what was once accepted without doubt. What seemed like a senseless tragedy now appears entangled in secrecy, power plays, and palace politics. Then came the shockwave. Charles's quiet admission. The cause wasn't a foreign conspiracy, he reportedly said. It came from within. Those few words hit like a bomb. Not from outside forces. Not a distant enemy. But someone close. Someone trusted. The phrase, inner circle, suddenly carries a darker weight. Family, aides, maybe even agents embedded within the monarchy. It suggests betrayal not by strangers, but by those closest to the crown. The walls of Buckingham Palace, once symbols of strength, now seem fragile, porous. The illusion of safety shattered. For the public, disbelief quickly turned into suspicion. The idea that enemies hid behind royal smiles shook the foundation of what the monarchy represented. Trust, once broken, is hard to reclaim. And then the question hung in the air. Who? The tension mounts. The camera drifts through hushed corridors and behind ornate doors, where secrets have festered for decades. Someone in that palace knew more than they let on. Someone pulled strings. Was it a rogue MI6 agent? A royal aide with too much access and too many secrets? Or someone far more personal? An individual whose loyalty masked ambition or resentment? Faces flash across the screen. Short profiles. Motives. Relationships. Tiny details now carry explosive meaning. The audience becomes part of the investigation, guessing, analyzing, theorizing. What started as a documentary becomes a whodunit. The suspense tightens. The pressure builds. And with each clue, the world leans in closer, desperate to know who betrayed her and why. King Charles returned to the screen, his voice calm but firm. This wasn't just another royal address. It was a vow. Every name, he said, would be revealed. No more secrets. No more shadows. For the first time, the monarchy promised full transparency surrounding the tragedy that changed everything. The death of Princess Diana. Behind the scenes, a flurry of activity erupted. Dusty archives were cracked open under candlelight. Sealed files, once untouchable, were unlocked. Legal teams gathered with quiet intensity. A palace long known for silence was now leaning into something radical. The truth. But the moment was fragile. Hope teetered on the edge of skepticism. The public wanted to believe, but after decades of royal cover-ups, they weren't ready to trust blindly. Still, something was different this time. Independent investigators were brought in. Historians granted full access. The monarchy, it seemed, was finally ready to confront its past. Then came the revelation that shook the nation. The tragedy surrounding Diana's death may have been orchestrated from within the palace itself. The shock was immediate. Inside Buckingham's walls, silence gave way to chaos. Loyal aides scrambled. Ministers were briefed behind closed doors. The system built on control was now forced to reckon with crisis. Security teams dove into decades-old files, combing through logs, calls, and hidden communications. The palace was no longer just managing a scandal. It was unraveling. Whispers of betrayal and loyalty divided the staff. Leaked memos surfaced. Anonymous sources spoke out. Headlines exploded. The royal family, once untouchable, now stood exposed. What followed was nothing short of a full-scale investigation. Crash forensics were reenacted with surgical precision. Experts analyzed old footage and audio from that night, applying modern tools to every frame. Police transmissions were re-examined. Intelligence files, once locked behind layers of red tape, were suddenly on the table. MI6 records, classified briefings, confidential communications. All of it dragged into the light. For the monarchy, this was a defining moment. What began as a promise now threatened to rewrite history. The world watched closely, because if the truth finally surfaced, it wouldn't just change how we remember Diana's death. It would change the royal family forever. Every piece of evidence was treated like sacred ground. Chain of custody was strictly enforced, while legal counsel hovered over every step to ensure the process held up to the highest judicial standards. No loopholes. No missteps. This wasn't just an inquiry, it was a fight for the truth. With so much at stake, the investigation became a battleground, not of weapons, but of facts. Every detail was scrutinized with relentless precision, driven by one goal: to deliver clarity, not just to the courts, but to the public and the royal family. An end to decades of silence, shadows, and speculation. As evidence mounted, attention shifted to those who might have orchestrated or enabled the fatal crash. Theories swirled. One name that surfaced often: a disgruntled former MI6 agent. A ghost with the right skills and the perfect motive: revenge. But proving it was another matter entirely. There was no room for guesses. Only hard evidence would suffice. Then came a darker thread. Inside the palace itself. Could a trusted aide, with intimate access to Diana's life and schedule, have betrayed her? Jealousy. Power struggles. Ambition. Whispers of betrayal by someone close enough to touch her crown. Even the press wasn't spared. Some believed rogue paparazzi didn't just chase Diana but may have been tipped off, perhaps by palace insiders. The line between harassment and sabotage blurred. Theories stretched even further. One, almost too bold to believe, pointed to a member of the royal family, a person who stood to gain from Diana's absence, or who feared what she might reveal. A chilling possibility, but not one investigators ignored. To engage a global audience, anonymous polls and interactive tools invited the public to weigh in. No names were released, but the clues were enough. The hunt for the architect behind the tragedy had truly begun. News of King Charles's declaration and the probe that followed lit a fire across the world. From London to Paris, the reaction was electric. People rallied, demanding one thing: truth. Justice for Diana became a global chorus. Leaders from every corner of the globe offered their support. British and French officials opened diplomatic channels, pledging cooperation. What had begun as a royal scandal now felt like a global reckoning. Royal biographers and historians took to the airwaves, suggesting that this investigation could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the monarchy. The carefully maintained image of dignity and tradition was cracking under the weight of long-buried secrets. Meanwhile, social media erupted. Hashtags exploded. Conspiracy theories, emotional outpourings, and fierce debates filled timelines. Millions around the world engaged, not just as spectators, but as witnesses to history. This wasn't just about royalty anymore. It was about accountability, about legacy, and above all, about a woman whose truth, even in death, refused to be silenced. Ask ChatGPT. In the face of global outrage and mounting pressure, King Charles made a bold move. He announced a full public inquiry. It was a historic gesture, a sign that the monarchy was no longer willing to hide behind tradition. A respected judge would lead a panel of independent experts tasked with uncovering the truth. Their mission? To review evidence, hear testimonies, and peel back decades of royal secrecy. In an extraordinary shift toward transparency, the palace opened its heavily guarded archives to a select group of historians. For the first time, hidden documents would see the light of day. And in a rare show of unity, Charles reached across borders, inviting French authorities to collaborate, signaling a commitment to justice that transcended national pride. A global broadcast was scheduled. The world would witness the proceedings in real time. No redacted reports, no whispered conclusions. This wasn't going to be handled behind palace walls. The monarchy had stepped into the spotlight, daring the world to watch. But inside Windsor, the fallout was immediate and fierce. The announcement sent shockwaves through the royal household. The palace, long known for silence and symmetry, was suddenly cracked wide open. Behind the scenes, whispers turned into arguments. Advisors and senior royals split into factions, some urging full transparency, others pushing for control and caution. Trust became scarce. Old loyalties wavered. King Charles faced growing internal resistance. Some quietly suggested abdication, arguing his revelations had gone too far. What some hailed as courage, others feared was recklessness, a move that could unravel the institution from within. Princes William and Harry, heirs to Diana's legacy, stood at emotional crossroads. William pressed for clarity. Harry demanded truth. Both were navigating their grief, anger, and sense of duty, each on a separate path shaped by their mother's shadow. Queen Camilla, too, found herself at the center of scrutiny. Some saw her as a steady hand. Others saw only silence and complicity. Her role within the royal machine was now more exposed and more questioned than ever before. The monarchy's polished surface had been pierced, revealing not just scandal, but humanity. And as the inquiry loomed, one thing was certain: the age of royal untouchability was over. What came next could either destroy the crown, or redefine it for a new era. As tensions soared, Windsor stood at a breaking point, torn between protecting centuries of tradition and facing a reckoning it could no longer outrun. Then came King Charles's solemn address. Just as the world leaned in, breath held, his broadcast cut off. "The evidence," he said quietly, "points to someone very close." And then, silence. No names. No answers. Only a promise. The full truth would be revealed within the week. The screen faded to an image of sealed court files lit by flickering candlelight. A heavy wooden door slowly creaked shut, symbolizing decades of secrets locked away. Then, the camera lingered on Diana's statue, bathed in moonlight, a ghostly reminder of the woman at the center of it all. The cliffhanger set the world ablaze. News outlets scrambled. Social media exploded with theories. Who was this person very close? A royal insider? A trusted aide? An intelligence officer? The suspense blurred reality with speculation, igniting debates and conspiracies across every platform imaginable. The palace had orchestrated its timing perfectly. Global audiences were hooked, desperate for the next chapter. This wasn't just a mystery, it was a cultural reckoning. A moment where history, loyalty, and justice collided. Suddenly, the public wasn't just watching. They were participating. Polls, comment threads, live streams, everyone had a theory, a suspect, a question. What began as an investigation turned into a worldwide conversation about monarchy, power, and truth. As fragments of the truth trickled out, deeper questions took root. Could the royal family survive the weight of betrayal? Was transparency enough to heal the trust that had eroded over time? Or was this the beginning of the monarchy's slow decline? Podcasts, documentaries, and expert panels dissected every word and clue, drawing links between the revelations and broader issues: privilege, accountability, secrecy. Even the balance between royal privacy and public interest was questioned. What should remain sacred? And what must be brought into the light? Calls for justice grew louder. People weren't just curious, they were invested. The truth mattered, not just for Diana, but for the soul of the institution she once challenged with grace and quiet defiance. And then, the question echoed louder than ever. What will this truth mean for the monarchy's future? Princess Diana's death was never just an accident. It left a scar on Britain that still aches. For nearly 30 years, the same haunting question has echoed. Was it a tragic fluke, or something far more deliberate, buried in the shadows? Now, the world was finally closing in on the answer. It's easy to accept the official story, that Diana's death was a tragic accident caused by a drunk driver. But the deeper you look into that night, the more the cracks begin to show. Faulty security cameras, conflicting witness accounts, a royal silence that lasted too long, and most unsettling of all, Diana's own handwritten note, where she confessed she feared someone was planning to get rid of her. Was it just paranoia? Or was she onto something? I don't believe Camilla was directly involved. But her presence, the role she played in Diana's unraveling marriage, was undeniable. Could Diana's continued existence have been a threat to the carefully curated royal image? Especially with Camilla waiting quietly in the background? In a world where optics matter more than truth, removing someone like Diana, outspoken, emotional, adored, might have been seen as a necessary move in a brutal game of royal survival. That's why, even decades later, her death doesn't feel settled. It doesn't feel closed. It lingers like a ghost over the monarchy, a haunting question mark that refuses to fade. Like and subscribe the channel for more interesting updates about the British royal family.